I'll be doing a mock draft, and this will be interesting because Russell Wilson is now part of the New York Giants, and we'll have to see how that impacts their selection at 3. Are they still willing to take a quarterback? Does this mean that 1 and 2 will be quarterbacks, and they saw that and they couldn't trade up, so they just settled with Russell Wilson? I don't know. We'll find out, though. So let's go ahead and get right into this, and yeah, I'm excited. With the first overall pick, the Tennessee Titans will be selecting. I'm sure you've never seen this before. Cam Ward, the quarterback out of Miami. He brings a lot to the table physically. He has a very strong arm. He's very calm under pressure, and he has the traits to develop into a future quarterback of the future and a franchise guy for a team like the Titans. All right, next up, the Cleveland Browns. They are in a very, very bad cap space. They need a quarterback who can produce because they don't have anybody else right now other than Kenny Pickett, because Deshaun Watson will not be playing next year. And you don't want to go with Kenny Pickett no matter what situation you're in. So you have a quarterback here in Shedeur Sanders who's really accurate, who you think can be your franchise guy, and you're getting him for the cheap for 4 or 5 years. So I think you have to take that. So instead of paying just Deshaun Watson $50 million a year, you're paying Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson, who's not going to play, $60 million a year, which kind of evens it out because you're getting someone who's actually going to play and at a decent level too. All right, next up, the New York Giants. Like I said, they already got Russell Wilson, so I think this is between Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter. And at this spot, I think Travis Hunter makes the most sense for them because they already have Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns and Dexter Lawrence on that defensive line. And man, Travis Hunter, he brings a lot to the table as a cornerback and a receiver. He's a guy he has great athleticism. He can lock down as a cornerback. He's a really good receiver. He can jump really high. He can run really fast. And he'll probably end up playing cornerback with a little bit of receiver mixed in. But I'm telling you, when Malik Neighbors and Travis Hunter are on the field, it'll be a scary sight for the defense. Next up, this is a no-brainer if you're the Patriots. You're taking Abdul Carter. The Patriots don't have too much pass rush right now. They brought in Harold Landry in free agency, but that's not a huge move that's going to really solve your inability to rush the passer. So I think bringing in a guy who's maybe arguably the best player in this whole class, and Abdul Carter at 4, that's something that Mike Vrabel and this team would love. And I think this is a team that wants to build through the trenches now with Mike Vrabel, and I think Abdul Carter absolutely helps you do that. All right, next up, Jacksonville Jaguars. This has been the same throughout the whole process for me for the most part, except for when Travis Hunter falls down here, but Mason Graham just makes too much sense with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're filled in at most spots other than the defensive interior, and Mason Graham's the guy who can have a 10 to 15 year career, and he's really just good at everything. He's good at rushing the passer. He's good at stopping the run. I think he excels in stopping the run, and he was just so solid. This feels like a guy who's not gonna bust when he's in the NFL, and he has a relatively high ceiling as well. So I think this is a really no-brainer pick here for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now here's where it gets a little different, because I feel like picks 1 through 5 are going to be those 5 guys in a certain order. But then you get here, and Raiders could go several different ways. You got Tedero McMillan, you got Ashton Genty, you got Will Johnson. Maybe you could go for Membu if you want to solid up that O-line. But I think Genty makes the most sense here. You look at Pete Carroll and what he did in Seattle. Marshawn Lynch was a huge piece of that. And I think Ashton Genty is just the way he uses contact balance, the way he just breaks every tackle, the way he's explosive. I think this would be a great pick for the Raiders, especially for a team that needs a little bit more of a spark for that offense. Other than Brock Bowers, they don't really have anything other than Geno Smith, obviously, who's their quarterback. But on the skill position-wise, you don't have anybody outside of Brock Bowers. And then you get a guy like Brock Bowers and mix that with Ashton Genty. nobody's going to be able to tackle your team. All right, next up, the New York Jets. This is the pick where it really goes a bunch of different ways because I think the Raiders are probably going to go Ginty. I think that's probably where most people are leaning right now. But the Jets, I've seen a ton of different things. I've seen defensive line, I've seen offensive line, I've seen quarterback, I've seen Tyler Warren. But I think here in the end, I think the one that just makes the most sense is soliding up that O-line, build through the trenches. That's what they did in Detroit. And Armand Membu is the best pure tackle, versatile offensive lineman in this whole class. He's very fast. He ran a 4.91 at 6'4" and 330 pounds. That's insane athleticism. He's strong. He's fast. He can play anywhere on the line. And I think this would be a great pick for the Jets. Next up, the Carolina Panthers. They really need defense. They really need a guy on that defensive line who can contribute. And you have a guy here who's just a freak of nature as an athlete. He is just insane. And he is 6'5", 270, had a 40-inch vertical jump and an 11-foot broad jump. That guy is Shamar Stewart. And I just think if this guy reaches his full potential in the NFL, you're talking about Myles Garrett level ceilings. You gotta reach at this point in the draft. If you have someone with that physical trait, those physical traits, he can be crazy in the NFL. And people point to the lack of production in college, the 1.5 sacks. If you actually watch the tape, he does produce a lot. He stops a lot of the runs, and the way Texas A&M used him, they didn't really need him to get a ton of sacks because they already had Nick Scorton coming off the other edge, and you had Shamar Turner on the inside working them. And you had a bunch of other pieces that rotated in and out of that line. So, I mean, that wasn't really his job at A&M. And I think he'll shine a lot more in the NFL. Next up, the New Orleans Saints. I was thinking about Jackson Dart here, but I just don't think that would make the most sense. And I think Kellen Moore wants to start building this team back up. They were in a really bad salary cap situation. And I could see this going two ways. Either you attack the defensive line or you get yourself Tedero McMillan, who would be a number one receiver. And I think in the end, I think I'm going to go with the defensive line here because that's just too much of a need for them. And I think continuing Philadelphia's reputation of just signing or drafting Georgia defenders, bring in Mykel Williams, who's one of the best pure athletes in this class. He's not quite to the level of Shamar Stewart, but he is built to be a defensive end. And he had the production at Georgia, too. He was a scary guy off the edge. And I've seen him fall a little bit as of late. I don't know why, but I think he could go in this top 10 range, especially here to the New Orleans Saints. Next up, the Chicago Bears. I think this is somewhere where they would either go defensive line or running back in Amarian Hampton. And that's been a controversial pick. I haven't seen anybody have Amarian Hampton as high as number 10, and I'm considering it. Let's look at the other defensive line options first before we do that. You'd probably look at Mike Green here if you were taking defensive line, and I could definitely see that happening. However, this is tough. Do I go Mike Green or Amarian Hampton? My heart tells me Amarian Hampton because I want the cool thing that nobody expects to happen. But I just feel like Mike Green may make more sense. But you know what? We're here to have fun. Amarian Hampton goes 10, starts a big running back push-up in this class that's super talented. You could see a ton go in the top 100. I could see 7, 8 guys go in the top 100 from this running back class. And I think we're going to see that reflected in the first round. If not in the top 10, definitely in the top 20, 22 picks in this draft. Next up, the San Francisco 49ers. This is a team that really needs a lot. They could work on the defensive line. They could work on the offensive line. They could have more guys come in the secondary. They lost a lot in free agency, and I feel like this is going to be more of a rebuild year, or at least it should be, because they don't have anybody anymore. They lost everyone. And now you're going to have to pay Brock Purdy soon. And I think at this spot, you have a guy like Will Campbell sitting there, and you do have big need on the O line at the guard position. Do you maybe just take him there, or do you take Mike Green to solidify that defensive line? I think since you already have Nick Bosa, you can live a little bit longer without having a ton of people on the defensive line. But then again, you also have Trent Williams on that O line, but then again, he's also 38 years old. So Will Campbell will be the selection here. He's great. He would be a great guard in the league. He played really well as a tackle, but he just doesn't have the arm length to do that at the NFL level. At least that's what a bunch of people are projecting. Next up, the Dallas Cowboys. I think they go O-line or they go receiver here. They just lost a Hall of Fame guard in Zach Martin, which makes me kind of want to go Tyler Booker here to solidify that O-line. But then again, Tedero McMillan and Matthew Golden are still on the board. And I think this is tough because they could really use both things. I think in the end, I'm going to give them a guy to put right next to CeeDee Lamb. You got CeeDee Lamb and his route running, and then you got the speed of Matthew Golden, the hometown kid. I think that Matthew Golden would be a great fit in right next to CeeDee, and I think this is a team that could really use another playmaker on that offense. And I think their head coach, who is an offensive guy, would really love this. All right, next up, the Miami Dolphins. I can see this going a couple different ways. They really do need defensive back help. They do need help on that offensive line. They got a few guys in free agency, but I think that secondary is more of a need than that O-line maybe but then again, Tua, one more concussion, career's over. So this is really for me between Tyler Booker and a guy like Will Johnson. And I think Will Johnson's just too good of a prospect at this spot to pass up because he was a guy going into the year that was viewed as maybe a top 3 guy, but he had a bad year, and he's kind of similar to Derek Stingley in a way where he had a really good year, but then the next year he was kind of filled with injuries, and he fell down the draft board a little bit. I mean, Derek Stingley still went 3rd, but we were expecting him to go in the 10-12 range. So I think you can kind of compare Stingley at LSU to Will Johnson at Michigan. Colts, I don't think Tyler Warren will make it all the way down to 14 if I'm being completely honest, but in this situation, he does, and this is a home run pick because the way how versatile he is, how good of an athlete Tyler Warren is, and the Colts really need tight ends, so I think that would be a magnificent pickup for them. For me, this is D-line all the way for the Atlanta Falcons at 15. Now, there are 2 options. It's either Jalen Walker out of Georgia, the hometown kid, or Mike Green, who's just a pure pass rusher out of Marshall. And I think the Falcons could tuck themselves into the hybrid nature of Jalen Walker because they need a lot on that defensive line. However, I do think Jalen Walker will fall due to concerns of him just being a tweener because he's not the greatest outside linebacker or off-ball linebacker, but he's good at that. He's also a pretty good edge defender, but he's 6'2". I don't know if he can really rush the pass at an elite level in the NFL with that size, and I feel like that may cause for a little bit of drop. So for that reason, Mike Green, the D1 leader in sacks, is going to the Atlanta Falcons at 15. He's just a real physical guy, uses speed and finesse to get through the line, and I think this would be I know I've said this every time, but I think it would be a great pick. Maybe it's just because I'm making these picks, and if something unexpected happens, I wouldn't like it, but that's just where my head's at with Mike Green to the Falcons. All right, Arizona Cardinals. This is probably O-line or D-line. That's what I've seen a lot. But you just had Mike Green come off the board, and Jalen Walker is here. That would be interesting. You also got guys like James Pierce here. But I think Walter Nolan at this spot would be a great selection. He's got a ton of potential. He's just a force on the inside. He is, let me pull up his measurables real quick. He is 6'3", 305, and he is quick. He is elusive. He can get through that line. He can stop the run as well as he can rush the pass. I think this would really fit in with Arizona's defensive line. That's starting to build some pieces. You got Josh Sweat on there now. You got Darius Robinson out of Mizzou, who you took last year, who hasn't been great so far. I had some concerns about him last year due to his, like I said with Jalen Walker, he's kind of a tweener. He's not really a defensive tackle, but not really an edge guy either. So that's where Arizona's D-line's at right now. Next up, this is the Bengals. This is also D-line all the way. And they need pass rush, and you got one of the best pass rushers in the draft here still available. So I think James Pierce Jr. stays with the orange team, goes to the Bengals. This was a guy who was projected to be the number one pick before the college football season. And then he didn't play as much. They were cycling in a lot of different guys on that defensive line. And he had some character concerns from people who used to be in high school with them, causing him to drop a little bit, and people are starting to cool on his tape a little bit. But I still think he's excellent. I watch him, and I was wowed by how he uses power and speed just to bully offensive tackles and get through. It's something I haven't seen a lot in defensive linemen, and I think it would be an excellent pick here for the Bengals, especially for a team that needs to hit on defensive linemen, because they're paying T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow over 60% of their cap. They cannot do that. That is not sustainable if they want to have a contending team and a good defense. Okay, next up, the Seattle Seahawks. This is interesting because you got a really, really bad offensive line here in Seattle. And I think a lot of their fans would want a offensive lineman, but their GM said guards are the most overdrafted, overpaid position in the NFL. So I have some doubts, and I don't think he'll really go that direction. But then you also got some edge defenders that are interesting. Kenneth Grant would really fit in with this team. I think that's one of my finalists. I'm really down to two people. It's Kenneth Grant or Nick Warrior. And Nick Warrior, with what he did at the Combine, he is 6'3", 230 pounds, ran a 4.4 flat 40, and he had a crazy vertical jump. He's just a freak of nature at the safety position, and he plays good too. You can see it on tape. And then what Mike McDonald did in Baltimore as a DC with Kyle Hamilton, I think is something they could really replicate, which makes me lean in that direction over a guy like a Kenneth Grant. So for that reason, Nick Warrior to the Seattle Seahawks. Next up, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You got a lot of needs here. You could take Jahdae Barron, who's one of the best players in this class. You take a guy like Jahad Campbell. He's a great fit for the Buccaneers in this spot. You could take more edge help. You could take Kenneth Grant to pair with Vita Vea. That'd be really scary. But I think here, Jahad Campbell's just such a good fit with the Buccaneers and what they want to do. I think that's where you would have to end up going in the end. So, yeah. Okay, next up, the Denver Broncos. Broncos here, they are blessed because Teteroa McMillan has fallen all the way to 20, and you're getting Bo Nix, a top-tier target with a big catch radius. I think Sean Payton would love this, and I think that this is just a great way to help your young quarterback. All right, next up, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Man, this is interesting. Jackson Dart's available. But then again, are they going to take Jackson Dart that high? I think they will. I think Jackson Dart would be a good fit with Mike Tomlin, and they need to start bringing in a young quarterback, and they need to do something different because their team has been stagnant. Their offense has been terrible over the past few years, and I think they really need to level up in Jackson Dart. Next up, the LA Chargers. This could definitely be defensive line here. Kenneth Grant out of Michigan's really interesting. That's Harbaugh's guy. But they also need receiver, tight end. Colson Loveland's still here, too. He's a great tight end. But I think Kenneth Grant's such a good athlete at this spot. I think that John Harbaugh would love to take his guy out of Michigan. And yeah, I think that would be just a match made in heaven for the Chargers. All right, next up, the Green Bay Packers. You got a lot of different directions they could go here. I mean, this is really interesting. Jalen Walker is still available. You got Jade Barron, who might be where I end up leaning because the tape was so good at Texas that I think that could fit right in for the nickel for Green Bay. I know they did sign someone, but I still think it fits in with what they want to do, and especially with Jair Alexander maybe getting out, you need to bolster up that secondary. Next up, the Minnesota Vikings. I think Malachi Starks would fit in really well here. Vikings fans, look away. It's not Lewis Cine. Safety out of Georgia. I know it's scary to go back to that, but I think Malachi Starks is a great player. He'd be a great free safety, and I think that this would go really well in that Minnesota defense. All right, the Houston Texans. They did lose a guy in Laramie Tunsil to a trade with the Commanders, and you got a guy in Josh Simmons who is one of the elite linemen in all of college football. Before his injury, when he tore his ACL, he was looking like the number one tackle in all of college football. And I think that's something where if you're getting that potential at 25, I think you got to pull the trigger. I think you got to do it. And I think that would be just a great pickup for the Houston Texans. Next up, the LA Rams. I think Colson Loveland being here would just be too much for Sean McVay unless you need to pass up. They were really actively trying to trade up for Brock Bowers in last year's draft. I'm glad they didn't because Jared Verse turned out really well. But also Brock Bowers would have been really good on this Rams offense. But I think Colson Loveland brings a lot to the table. He's obviously receiving first, right running first, but he's not too shabby of a blocker. He's a really versatile tight end that would go great in today's league. Next up, the Baltimore Ravens. Jalen Walker being here is intriguing. It's really intriguing. That would be a great piece on that line, but you already got a good group there. You got Roquan Smith. Donovan Ezraku and Emeka Ibuka are the two guys that stand out to me right now. I think that at this point, I think getting Lamar another weapon would be viable, but he also has a lot around him. And Donovan Ezraku is just a great fit with the Ravens, and I think he's going to go pretty high. I think he will be a first rounder when it's all said and done. And I think what he showed at Boston College, I think he would be worthy here at pick 27. Next up, the Detroit Lions. I think they see a guy in Jalen Walker, and they just see the value, and they want to take a swing. And I think that would be a great selection if the Eagles didn't already trade up for him to get their Georgia guy. But I think pairing him with Aiden Hutchinson, that can maybe be your opposite pass rusher. And then you can put him as a linebacker too, drop him back. What I really loved watching at Georgia was how when he starts out as a linebacker and then comes to the pass rush, the whole offensive line, they have to shift their adjustments. Everything changes. He's that much of a difference maker. Next up, the Washington Commanders. This is a spot where they could go D-line, and you got some good guys like Nick Gordon and Landon Jackson here. Maybe a little bit higher than I think they will go. You could take offensive line here, and I think that's what I'm going to end up doing. I think Tyler Booker here makes sense because you got to protect your quarterback who's valuable goods in Jaden Daniels, and I think this is a guy where he obviously runs around a lot, and that's a big enough risk. But you got to protect him when he stays in the pocket as well. And Tyler Booker is probably the best guard in this whole class that played guard in college. And I think that This would be a great selection for them, and I think it really makes sense. Next up, the Buffalo Bills. They're a weird team. They have a lot of kind of needs, but kind of not. What I mean by that, they have a lot of guys that are good and decent, but not like enough to where you wouldn't draft a replacement. So this is interesting. You got really good defensive backs left on the board, corners. I could see a Maxwell Harrison going off the board here. I could see a Trey Amos. I could see a Darian Porter, a Savon Revel, a Benjamin Morrison, all the way down the board. Um, this is really interesting. And then you also look at the edges available. We already looked at those. Nick Scorton. I think I'm going to go corner here, and I think Maxwell Harrison out of Kentucky is the guy I'm going to go. He's really fast, ran a 4.29, but he's not just a fast guy. He's going to functionally use that. He's going to be able to keep up with fast receivers, and he's really good at denying the ball from receivers. So I think this would be a great selection here for the Buffalo Bills. Next up, the Kansas City Chiefs. I think this is O-line here. You got two guys you're looking at. I think Kelvin Banks or Gray Zabel. Here, it depends on what you want. Do you want a tackle or do you want a guard? And I think they traded away Joe Tooney. They need another guard. They also don't have a great tackle situation, but they signed the 49ers guy out of free agency, 2-year, $30, I believe. Or maybe it was more. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was quite a lot for a backup. It was like 3 or 45. I think I'm going to go Gray Zabel here just to solid up that interior O-line and just protect Mahomes, which they need to do, definitely. And then here at 32, a luxury pick for the Philadelphia Eagles, and Emeka Egbuka just fits perfectly in with the rest of those guys on that team. And I think you add him, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and that offense looks unstoppable. Along with the defense you already have, that would be a scary team. All right. Thank you for watching. I don't know if I'll have a camera with this as well with my face. I did for the first until about pick 20, and then my phone died. So we'll see if that first 20 picks, if they get on here. But if not, I guess it just wasn't meant to be. So I'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.